Playing as Mario in any of his games is always a treat. Playing as a Goomba, well, not so much. I mean, it does have its benefits, but they are few and far between. This is alright though, because when you play as a citizen of the Koopa Kingdom, you do not have some Italian jumping on you 24/7. If this were a PvP game, you would be in a dire situation if you got caught in the wildy as a paratrooper. If single player or co-op games are in balance, that's fine because it's normally you guys that are OP, and if not, at least it's a computer beating you up and not your next door neighbor going off on the sticks. If multiplayer games are in balance, well, it's still great if you're the one playing Robofish. It can get really shit though if you're the one versing him. Now, because you're not the center of the universe, these multiplayer games need to be fair and balanced to all players. What is fair and fun though is a very abstract idea, and more importantly can be a very difficult balancing act. If my character that I find fun is OP, that's great. If they are bad, it's not the worst thing in the world as long as they are incredibly fun. If the character I hate is one of the best in the game, or a worst case scenario, the only viable character, then I am very quickly going to stop playing the game and move on. Now, I think that's pretty reasonable and most people would agree with me. But what happens if I'm just bad at the game or playing my character wrong? When does the dev team need to step in and balance their game? Well, like most things, it depends. Balancing is done for a couple of reasons, and they're two sides of the same coin. Something is broken, or the meta has stagnated. Defining brokenness is a very peculiar thing, as it can be very subjective. I define overpowered and underpowered as not having the same resource budget as other members of the cast, while brokenness is a concept at the extreme end of the spectrum. I do not think it's the worst thing in the world to have characters be a little bit better or worse than others, especially when it's tied to their difficulty. But when certain characters render others totally obsolete, that is when something should be tuned. Now, balancing for meta development is even more abstract. Sometimes it gets boring having the same few characters or styles prove to be the winning solution, so the devs sometimes need to step in. This is healthy for a lot of games to keep things fresh, yet this does indicate something. Normally that something is that how the game was being played before is now not ideal. Maybe it restricted a vast roster to only a few viable options, so people want to see other characters have a chance, or maybe it was just really boring to watch. The latter of the bunch is always the most polarizing and interesting to follow. When devs balance games not for the player, but for the spectators. This is a unique problem for esports. I find Path of Exile fun to play, yet boring to watch. I find Counter-Strike very stressful to play, but extremely fun to watch. If the Counter-Strike meta develops into waiting for all the utility to be utilized on Inferno's banana though for a minute and a half, it does get slow and boring to watch. What happens though if the entertainment of the fans comes at the cost of the player? Well, ideally there needs to be a balance between the two, because if no one wants to play, there is nothing to watch. Whilst almost more importantly, for the pros at least, if no one wants to watch, they don't get paid. This is the very real risk you run playing an esport, as stupid as that sounds. If you want to be paid playing video games, then people need to find it interesting. I'm not seeing enough movement. And if you play an esport game casually or competitively, the game may not be balanced for you, but for the other half. Okay, so how do we balance for an esport? The normal tuning of mechanics should be applied and all of that. Tone things down, which are pretty absurd, balance character kits more so than their tools, give characters their identity, but don't let it nullify every other option. But what happens if you nerf a strategy or a role, and that's all you've been practicing? This is not a unique problem to esports, where rules in the real world make entire superstar athletes null and void over an off season. Your character can become bottom tier overnight and you're out of luck. I wouldn't be surprised in the near distant future if huge popular esports had some kind of stupid external consultants on the balancing team, especially when it looks like to be the billion-dollar industry that it's already becoming. So how do we balance esports? If you have your finger on the trigger every 2 weeks, no one can learn anything. Balancing every so often allows for metas to go their full duration. I like seasonal balances, but they need to be in the off season. When I see Tekken get balance patches a week before a major tournament, I laugh at how absurd it is. I'm all for bug fixes being applied whenever they want though. Devs do not need to force metas if a game is good and the community is already there. And simply keeping broken strats in check will allow skilled players to pioneer the meta on their own. If a game is sick, then people are going to watch it no matter what. People still watch Super Smash Bros. Melee after like 20 years with no balance changes, and they still have arguments over the order of their top characters. Anyone who's ever played a game like Dota is very well aware of how test servers work. They allow for devs to trial upcoming changes on self-contained servers, allowing players to test the changes and provide feedback before it's released on the live client. Tekken and other FGC devs should utilize them for feedback and data gathering. You can make what you think are the best tweaks and balancing changes, but nothing is better than getting raw data from thousands of players playing it out. I know it's very exciting to discover things, but you can still do that on the day of the test server. I think it's just a good way to work out all of the kinks before it's tournament time and we have fuck around hitboxes again. I'm a huge believer of looking at the overall kit of a character and not just their tools. Yoshimitsu's flash on paper is absolutely broken, but it's not because it's on Yoshimitsu. If Harang could flash, then people would riot. It's okay that some stuff is busted as long as the character has to spend its same resource budget on those tools as other characters do. This creates character identity and allows variety in the cast and playstyle, something that will allow metas to naturally flourish. All in all, if devs make good games and make sure they slowly introduce content and changes within properly timed seasons, they're pretty much good to go. If you are a pro player though, it's probably best to remain flexible because you never know when the devs might just nerf your income. Thanks for watching. All of my subscribers and any new subscribers today will receive a +1 to their luck stat to help decrease the chances of receiving shitty teammates and any nerfs to your main character. Bye.